Namaste. I am Nihar Barve and I welcome you all to the continuation of this series. We have explored four topics so far which focus on sustainable consumption, waste to energy, opportunities and challenges of e-waste, and case study of remote villages of India. You can watch those webinars on our YouTube channel. In this series of webinars, we will be exploring the sub-theme of waste and life under the Civil 20 engagement. The aim of these seminars is to provide viewers with a comprehensive understanding of the concepts, future courses of action, and the innovation taking place in this subtheme. We are excited to promote and spread awareness about the importance of sustainable lifestyle and can help us achieve a better future for ourselves and our planet. We encourage you to share your comments as long as they are linked to the topic at hand. We appreciate your presence and hope you enjoy this informative and engaging session. The topic of today's webinar is Green Buildings Designing for Sustainable Waste Management. Our speaker today, Gaurang Lele, is a highly qualified green building and sustainability advisor with over 12 years of experience in the field. He holds a degree in architecture and master's degree in sustainable architecture. Gaurang is well versed in solar passive building design, renewable energy systems, energy simulation, and alternative building materials. He has received accreditation from US Green Building Council and Indian Green Building Council and is also a certified GRIHA trainer and evaluator. As the director of Shashwat Green Building Consultants, Gaurang has successfully led numerous green building projects, including residential developments and office spaces. He has worked on notable projects such as Around the Mangoes Residential Development, G Corp Mahalakshmi High Rise Residential Development, and Midas Star. With a strong commitment to sustainability and expertise in green building practices, Gaurang is a valuable asset in promoting environmental friendly design and shaping a greener future for the built environment. I welcome Gaurang.
Namaste. Myself, architect Gaurang Lele. I am director for Shashwat Green Building Consultants. We are a sustainability advisory firm, as Nihar introduced me. So today I'll be discussing about role of green buildings in waste management. Right. So let me share my screen and then let's start with the today's discussion. Yeah, so topic for today is green buildings designed for sustainable waste management. This is my very favorite quote that men argue and nature acts. So we are actually witnessing what kind of climate issues we are facing, climate crisis we are facing, and many other issues related to global warming, glacier melting, and pollution, and other changing weather patterns, etc., etc. But still, we are just discussing what kind of mitigation measures we should do. And then individually or nationwide, separately, everyone is discussing about this. Everyone is proposing some action plan. But then if we have to mitigate these issues, we have to act together. And then we all know with different conference of parties like Paris Agreement or COP26, COP27 last year, we are basically discussing globally what kind of mitigation measures we should have. And then, as displayed over here, we are facing many different issues like water scarcity, drought situations. And among them, waste management is also one of the major issues which we are facing right now. Right. So just give you a basic idea about the carbon footprint, because we are talking about net zero now, net zero carbon. So in overall, India's contribution to carbon emissions globally is somewhere around 7.5%, which is again a significant amount. And then it is continuously increasing. So we have to act towards it. And then as in COP26, our Honorable Prime Minister declared that by 2070 we will achieve net zero economy, or we will have the net zero status, so which is again a very challenging kind of task. So when Honorable Prime Minister declared this, next day there was a very interesting caricature in Times of India, how we are going to achieve this target of 2070 to achieve zero emissions or net zero. So everyone from different technological fraternity, social sciences, economists, and everyone have their own role to achieve this net zero emission. And as a technocrats, specifically related to building sector, we also have a major part to play to achieve this net zero emissions. So I'll be focusing on buildings and like waste issues related to building, because again, achieve this net zero emission target by 2070, this waste management is also one of the major area or key area where we have to work, we have to develop strategies, we have to do innovations, and then we have to mitigate these challenges. So I'll be focusing on the majorly building sector. So why do we need these why we need to address building sector? Because we all know the way urbanization is happening, the way cities are growing, and with these like in Maharashtra right now, already 45% of the population is urban population, and then it is basically by 2030, the projection would be like more than 50% of the urban population in India would be urban population. And then obviously with this kind of urban population, the requirement for new buildings, requirement for new infrastructure or cities is continuously increasing. And then all the issues related to buildings are also going to increase. So that is why we really need to think about the buildings, both existing buildings and the new stock which we will be building in next maybe 15, 20 years. Uh, the way population is growing, the way migration is happening from rural areas to urban areas. Obviously, we have to meet all the aspirations, we have to meet the lifestyle standards, we have to meet the, we have to mitigate the poverty, we have to create employment, but at the same time, it should be responsible. So even city growth or the new building should be responsible. Again, buildings, when we talk about many times what happens is we think buildings in isolation, very small buildings, right? And then typically what happens is most of the stakeholders argue that uh, we don't have huge impact on environment, or we are not creating huge amount of waste or pollution. But with the sheer volume of number of buildings and number of population residing in buildings and the projects like commercial, different type of commercial, institutional, healthcare, or many different typologies of building, in volume, the impact is huge. So buildings are basically continuously consuming resources. They are depleting resources during construction phase and during operation phase also. So like they are consuming land, they are consuming different type of materials like metals, soils, plastics, you name it, and every material any building is consuming. At the same time, during construction and post occupancy, like in the operational phase, it is continuously using or consuming resources like water, electricity. And then same time during construction and operation, it is creating huge amount of waste also, which is actually today's point of discussion. So waste generation during construction phase and operational phase, we have to consider. As per CPCB report, that every year they have to present a report about what kind of waste they generate, India generated. So as per CPCB 2020-21, the total quantity of solid waste generated in the country is somewhere like 1,60,000 tons per day, and out of which 1,52,000 tons per day is being collected, which is like efficiency of 95%. But if you check the percent treated, it is only 50% is being treated, and then almost 18% is going to the landfill, right? But the gap again is like 31% of the total waste generated remains unaccounted. So we are only treating 50%, 18% is going to anyways landfill, and then 31% we don't know what is happening to that waste. So it is a huge amount of waste generated, municipal solid waste. Also, most of the time what happens is we only talk about municipal solid waste generated. Obviously, that is a major concern. But then still we typically ignore the construction and demolition waste. The way construction industry is growing, the way population is growing, the requirement for houses, different type of buildings are growing. There is a huge increment in construction and demolition waste. So there is there are few research papers available, and the other statistics is available. So the country also generates almost 150 million ton per year of construction and demolition waste, and only 1.5%. This is also very on positive side. I am considering 1.5, but as per many research paper, it is only 0.5 to 1% of the total construction and waste demolition waste generated is being treated or being recycled. All other waste is going to the landfills. It is polluting the farms. It is polluting the rivers. It is polluting the air and many other resources. So we need to think about this waste also. So, is there any existing legal framework related to waste management? Yes, it is there. So, there are many rules and regulations related to waste management. So, from recycled plastic manufacture and usage rule from 2019. So, actually, from Environmental Protection Act or Air Act, there are rules related to the waste management, but then we also have different specific rules related to plastic, batteries, e-waste, hazardous waste. Even for construction and demolition waste, there are rules from 2016, biomedical waste, waste management. Now even we have rules regarding to the waste water also, how you should treat the wastewater. So there are legal frameworks available, but the problem is with the implementation and awareness. So existing legal framework is already there, but we have to implement it properly. We have to monitor it properly. In this regard, basically, green buildings play a major role. So, what is a green building? So, in simple language, a green building is one which uses less water, it uses less energy. So, again, I'm not green buildings don't say that you should compromise on your aspirations or compromise on your thermal comfort or visual comfort or other comfort conditions. But then the building should be responsible enough to optimize the energy usage, reduce the water consumption. It should conserve the natural resources. And again, during operation and maintenance period, or even during construction period, it should generate less waste, and any waste generated by the building should be managed responsibly or properly. And with these all aspects, we should provide healthier spaces for occupants. And again, it is in comparison with conventional practices, in comparison with some standards. So again, there is a some benchmarking and standard available where you are comparing your buildings with these standards and then proving and validating whether it is performing right or in the right way or not in the right way. So that is why that is what I'll basically define as a green building. In green building, again, this integrated approach is very important. Many times, what happens is all the designers or policy makers, or even if we talk about waste management policies and waste management protocols, everyone is sitting in silos and creating their own or targeting their own area of expertise there. But then what happens is if we don't have this integrated approach, like if I have to design a sustainable building or if I have to design a sustainable practice for waste management, we have to consider about building owners, we have to consider about occupants, then the architects, designers, engineering faculty who are designing the buildings or the systems, then who are going to construct these kind of systems. So we have to consider about builders, contractors, the way laborers are working, whether the materials and the technologies available in this scenario is there or not, that we need to check. And then again, government and regulators. So if everyone is on board and then they are targeting for this kind of facilities or these kind of waste management practices, then only a successful waste management practice can be implemented. So in any sustainable building for any system which is sustainable, it should follow an integrated approach and also the life cycle approach for waste management through buildings. So when I'm talking about buildings, many times what happens is we only think that after construction, the waste generation will start, and then we have to only treat the solid waste, municipal solid waste generated by the building, and then some strategies related to it. But it is not true. So as we discussed, there is a huge amount of construction and demolition waste problem is also there. So from design phase, we designers, architects, or other consultants who are designing the building, or even owners and contractors who are going to construct the building, they should think about these problems like waste generation. Then during construction phase, we have to implement these protocols properly. Need to select proper materials, select proper technologies. Then only you can reduce the waste generation during construction. And obviously, other systems like waste management systems, while during operational phase, we have to consider at the design stage itself. So we have to consider while designing where the organic waste is going to treatment for organic waste is going to happen, or how we are segregating. So if the designer don't think about the segregation of waste in designing, and he or she is not allocating the space for the segregation or treatment, obviously it is impossible to treat that kind of waste in operation and maintenance period. So as I was focusing on integrated design approach, so at that time only they should think about how the facility is going to be managed, how the waste is going to be created, and then what kind of technology or what kind of process and protocols we are going to implement during operation and maintenance, and also at the end of life and recycle uh, process. Like what happens is most of the time we don't think about the end of the life. What will happen to that building when the actual it has reached at the stage of end of life, and then the huge demolition waste, and then uh, issues related to construction and demolition waste arises. So this kind of life cycle approach for waste management should be basically considered. So I'm focusing these three aspects right now. So approaching solid waste management at design stage, which is first phase. So I'll be discussing these four issues. So, these four solutions, which we generally consider while designing or while constructing these green buildings. So very simple adaptive reuse of buildings. So nowadays we have started discussing whether we can use the buildings which are old, and then instead of demolishing the building totally, can we use that building for another type of use, or can we use some part of the building where we can reuse those spaces with adaptive change in. So this is a very interesting example where the existing factory shed is being converted to the office building. So now we just need to change the interiors of the project. So thus we are reducing the demolition waste by demolishing the total factory building and then constructing a new building which will be an office building. So such kind of practices can reduce waste problem drastically, specifically construction and demolition waste. So alternative use of existing building or existing spaces, or designing flexible spaces where we don't need multiple spaces for multiple activities, but we can accommodate multiple activities in single space by scheduling these activities at different time of day or different season. So there are seasonal activities happening. So such kind of approach will reduce the requirement for new construction. It will reduce the demolition waste, and this is how we can address such issues while designing. Then second solution would be like optimizing resources with design. Like with simple standardized modular designs, we can use different materials. We can reduce the wastage during manufacturing, like technologies like prefabricated modules, prefabricated designs, or even innovative technologies now available like 3D printing, where with such technologies, huge waste generated during material manufacturing and construction can be avoided. So such kind of practices can be used to reduce the construction waste generated during construction. But then this we have to think in design phase itself. So it cannot be like we have designed the building and then now we are thinking about these technology. That will not happen. So at design stage itself, we should think about these this optimization of a resource. Like I'll give you some simple examples, like using salvage materials. We can reuse furniture, which is salvage furniture, or even in industries, many times what happens is whole structural steel is being reused, which is salvage steel and being reused for construction of new factories or new buildings. There, you are reducing environmental impact by reusing that material, which otherwise will go to the waste, and then you have to consume huge amount of energy to basically mitigate that waste problem. So such kind of salvage materials, salvage furniture, salvage spaces can be reused, and then we can reduce the waste. Similarly, material selection of material is very critical while designing, because it happens at the designing, or even like simple what kind of dimensions I'm thinking about. So I'll just give you this example of glass facade. So we generally see a lot of buildings with glass facade nowadays, and then they are having these glass panels. So when they are designing glass panel, they need to think about what is the standardized size which is being manufactured at a glass manufacturing factory. Because otherwise, if you design with any other dimension, it will increase the waste generated during construction. So of that glass waste, right? So even designer should think about these issues. Then only we can address such issues related to waste generation during construction. So use of prefabricated doors or windows or standard with standardized dimensions. So if we standardize some dimensions and then we mass manufacture or prefabricate such kind of elements like door, windows, or even wall panels or different furnitures, so we can reduce these kind of waste generation during construction drastically. Also, considering and selecting materials with recycled content. Many times, what happens is there is a notion that materials with recycled content or recycled materials are not good in quality, but it is not true. There are protocols and there are processes where you get the material with recycled content with the strength or quality at par, but at the same time you are reducing huge amount of waste generated during both. Post industrial is basically any waste generated by industry, manufacturing industry, and they are again recycling that waste to. So I'll just give you a simple example of steel manufacturing. So typically what happens is steel plates are generally manufactured first, then the sections, and then the re-rolled bars. So all these steel bars we use for construction, they are typically re-rolled, and that re-rolling process, they are recycling the waste generated in the uh, manufacturing of steel plates. Right. So that kind of post industrial waste is not affecting your strength of steel or the quality of steel. So we should be open to accept those kind of materials where this recycled content is being used for manufacturing. And in post consumer, basically all the scrap we generally sell to the scrap vendors, or many scrap vendors collect the scrap. So again, it is anyways going to be recycled, right? So this post-consumer steel or post-consumer factor is also there in many materials. So we just need to be open. We need to consider while selection of material. We should be conscious to say that we will use the material with recycled content. Then only the whole waste problem can be resolved. So again, simple example of materials like cement, which is a huge contributor to the GHG emissions, huge resource intensive. It uses lime and then other materials, uses huge amount of energy. And then typically instead of ordinary Portland cement, now if we use this Portland Pozzolana cement or PPC, which is basically replacing cement in some percentage ranging from 15 to 30%. It is replacing cement with fly ash. So fly ash is nothing but the waste material generated by thermal power plants where you're burning the coal and generating electricity, and byproduct or waste is basically fly ash. So again, without compromising on the strength or compressive strength, you can safely replace virgin material like cement by 20 to 30% with fly ash. It will not compromise on structural strength, but it will solve huge issue of disposal of this fly ash. Similarly, ground granulated blast slag cement or GGBS. So here again, while manufacturing of steel or blast furnaces are there, and then the slag is generated as a waste, and then there is a huge problem related to the disposal of this waste material like fly ash and slag. So this is again being recycled and reused as a replacement to the cement. And these materials are easily available without any additional cost, but they are basically very environment friendly, I can say, and then reducing the problem related to disposal of waste. Next is approaching solid waste management at construction level. So we discussed about design phase, how we can, while designing, consider about waste and change the practices. So similarly, approaching solid waste management at construction is basically regular practice of reduction of waste, reuse, and then recycle during construction phase. So that is how any waste problem should be targeted. So first should be reduced waste generation. So waste reduction, on-site waste reduction. So there is a huge amount of waste which is typically generated during construction phase. So there would be steel scrap, there would be different type of materials which are going like block work, tile work, fall ceiling, etc., which are creating waste. At the same time, there are many packaging materials like cardboards or wooden packaging material would be there. And then if we select proper technology, if we select proper practices, we can reduce the waste generation. So I'll just give you simple example. There are machineries and technologies available for steel bar bending, where you have those coils of steel bars and they are cutting precise length of steel. So with that, you are reducing huge amount of steel scraps or couplers these days they use for steel bars. So that can reduce huge amount of steel waste generated during construction. Or there are materials like technology like my1 construction where you are using the same formwork and multiplying reusing it at each different floor. So this is how you are reducing the material wastage during centering, which is typically happens with plywood and steel sections. So such kind of selection of such kind of materials, technologies that can reduce huge amount of waste during construction on site. Then the second option should be reuse or recycle. Mentality is there to reuse such kind of waste, but then it should be a conscious decision, and then first we need to segregate that waste properly. So in green buildings we typically focus on this construction waste management protocol, where each different type of material waste generated on site shall be properly segregated, and then we should identify strategy to uh, reuse it or then recycle it. So reuse may we can use, like I have given few examples over here, where brick blocks or AC blocks can be reused for waterproofing works or backfilling work. Reuse of concrete for walkways, internal side roads, or even nowadays, plastic is being reused for these internal site roads or road construction. Reuse of steel on site. So even these steel bars can be reused for temporary structures, or they can be welded properly and can be used for smaller sections. So such kind of reuse practices can be implemented on site. And then obviously recycle. So any material which cannot be reused on site, that will be sent to the recycler. So we need to identify at the construction site who are the recyclers available in near vicinity and what kind of materials generated on site can be sent to them. So typically steel waste, paint cans, or empty gunny bags, or even cardboard and packaging material like plastic can be sent to the recyclers, and proper protocol can be implemented. What kind of material will go to what kind of recycler, how they are recycling it. So with all these proper implementation, we can reduce huge problem of waste generated, specifically construction waste generated in buildings. Yeah, so there are some on-site segregation and reuse during construction examples. So here you can see even empty gunny bags can be reused for some sand filling, or even for barrication, where we generally use these kind of green nets, but in one of the site they use these empty gunny bags. They created screens with those gunny bags, and they are being reused. So such kind of innovative it is not technology, but innovative adoption of waste management practices can be implemented. Now, while selection of material, this cradle to cradle approach is being focused by green building, all different green rating systems, or in overall green community. Because earlier we used to talk about only manufacturing process and construction process, but what will happen at end of life, what will happen to that particular product or material at end of life, and during operation what will be the maintenance and like refurnishing or refurbishment requirement. So this end of life stage is now being discussed for each and every material, and how that material is going to be demolished, what kind of waste it will generate during demolition, how that waste is going to be processed, whether that waste can be reused or recycled, and otherwise what will happen with the disposal methodology. So now in green buildings, we are totally focusing on the cradle to cradle approach, not cradle to gate or cradle to end of life approach. Yeah, so these are different stages we typically say, where the product stage, construction phase stage, usage stage, and now we are talking about even end of the life stage, where we are talking about deconstruction or demolition, what kind of practices will be there, transport of waste processing for reuse, recovery, and otherwise recycling, and then disposal stage. So for me, this kind of approach will actually target waste generation during whole life cycle of the project or whole life cycle of the material also. And this could be a really right way to look at the waste problem by buildings. Now, operation and maintenance. So, approaching solid waste management at operation and maintenance, solid waste management during building operation phase, and then requirements of provision for overall lifestyle. So, building operation phase, what we have realized is it is a lack of awareness and then lack of facilities available in the buildings. Like simply, uh, we all know that we need to segregate biodegradable and non-degradable waste. But if we don't give the proper facility, like proper dustbins or proper bins, where we can segregate what biodegradable, degradable waste and non-degradable waste. And again, there is a lack of awareness and education. What is biodegradable? What can go to that green bin and what should go to that blue bin or other bin where we are collecting non-biodegradable. So that is a major problem we are facing in the residential societies or facing in the building. So awareness, proper awareness campaign should be there. We should give proper guidelines. We should provide proper tenant guidelines at the time of occupancy. We should give proper sessions to sensitize these users or occupants. Then actually these practices can be actually implemented on site. So proper segregation is a key to waste management, because if we intermingle all these waste generated on site during operation, like biodegradable and non-degradable, then even if the projects are having any systems to treat those kind of waste, they won't be able to actually practice or treat the waste which is mixed with say if we have a biodegradable waste treatment plant over there, but we cannot use if the waste is mixed with non-degradable. So that kind of sensitization should be there. Also, what I feel is when we educate the occupant why it is important and how it is going to benefit them. So in many projects, what happens is they have these organic waste composters or other biogas facilities, but because of lack of knowledge and lack of awareness how these systems are helping them, most of the time they don't use those systems, because what they feel is, or what the occupants feel is, it is additional cost or additional efforts to maintain those systems. So if we give proper benefits, what are the benefits, financial benefits, and then if the government is providing some kind of subsidies or some kind of incentives, so definitely these kind of systems can be implemented and will be maintained by the occupants. So typical technologies buildings use to treat biodegradable waste is biogas or composting machines. So even automatic composting machines are there, organic composting machines. Vermicomposting pits are a very famous kind of system which earlier many societies were having. Obviously, there are issues related to maintenance of these systems. So again, training of proper maintenance staff or appointing proper maintenance staff is a key issue where we need to act. Then even liquid waste, so, we all are talking about solid waste, but again, huge amount of wastewater is being generated by buildings. So now, even in 2021, we have new rule where uh, facilities or residential societies having certain numbers of dwelling units, they need to treat their waste on site, wastewater on site. So again, different technologies with waste treatment plant, STPs, different typologies of STPs are available. And then again, instead of centralized sewage treatment plant, if we decentralize these sewage system plants at society level, they can be operated efficiently, they can treat that wastewater properly, and then again this wastewater can be reused for flushing, can be reused for irrigation, and thus we are reducing demand on potable water or infrastructure for potable water. So this should be encouraged, and most of the green buildings are basically implementing these practices and dealing with the problem with liquid waste generated by the projects. So different reuses like landscaping, toilet flushing, car washing, or even common area washing, this kind of treated water can be reused, and then you can reduce your demand for potable water. The requirement of like overall lifestyle, how we need to change is basically we need to start with the sensitization of occupants. We need to start educating the young people, students, make them aware about these issues, and then we can definitely act together and mitigate this issue of waste. So we need to create a system and framework for these kind of trainings, these kind of sensitization. Then decentralization of solid waste management is very important. What happens typically is if uh, my society is like my waste is being picked by say centralized system, my society will never think about treating the waste on site. So we need to push the residential societies. We need to, like government and regulators should push the residential societies or waste generators to segregate their waste, to treat their waste, and then only we can. Otherwise, centralized systems most of the time fail because huge volume would be there. Then segregation is a critical issue, and segregation at source is the actual solution or easy way to deal with the waste problem. So this is very important. So overall lifestyle, we need to sensitize the occupants and building users regarding this waste issues. Like community engagement, we have very interesting organization over here in Pune, which is Swachh, who is the organization of these waste collectors, and then they also provide solutions like maintaining your organic waste plants on society, and then engagement with like community engagement. They are implementing all these waste treatment practices on ground. So, social equity through green buildings, what I feel is, again, as we discuss, community engagement, education, awareness, accessible infrastructure like these facilities on your site, employment and job training, proper training of maintenance staff, employment of maintenance, properly trained maintenance staff, inclusive policies and regulations, then collaboration and partnerships and financial assistance or subsidies. Like we have very interesting financial assistance over here in Pune Municipal Corporation, where if you are treating your organic waste on site, and then there are two other green measures like rainwater harvesting and solar hot water or solar electricity generation, they give subsidies, they give discounts on property tax. So this is again a really good tool to incentivize people who are treating their waste or who are taking the are getting encouraged to maintain their organic waste treatment plants or uh, such facilities. So this is how we can actually address the issues related to waste generated by buildings. Also, we need to think about circular economy in overall life cycle or lifestyle. What kind of products we are purchasing, what kind of services we are purchasing, and what is the life of that product or service. What kind of carbon footprint is there with that product or service? What is going to happen if I have to recycle that product? What is going to happen if I have to say reuse that product? So typically Indian mentality is of reusing and then recycling, but then we need to encourage it properly. We need to identify how we are going to deal with each and every product while its life cycle. Also, there are many certification and validation programs available. And what happens with certification and validation programs are basically they are providing a framework to monitor how it is actually happening or not. Like there are certifications like Green Pro or True or Zero Waste certified, Zero Waste to Landfill certified. So actually, these kind of certification program they provide this monitoring and validation framework. Also, they are creating some benchmark with international standards or national standards, and then evaluating the performance of your building or project, be it existing building or new building. And then you can actually compare your data, your practices with these international standards, and then you can improve on these practices. And also it reduces this greenwashing, that just saying that, oh, I'm treating my waste on site, but whether you are treating your waste on site properly or not, what kind of practices you are following, what kind of framework you have to evaluate. So such certification and validations actually help. Also, it helps to create the brand value or create the pride among the society user, like occupants or users of those buildings. And then it helps to spread the word, it helps to educate the occupants with all these kind of certifications and validation. So that is how we can actually target. So we discussed about circular economy principles. What are the challenges? So typically, we typically feel that no technology is available. There are few materials where the technology is not available to reuse or recycle such kind of materials, or even in some manufacturers there are fear of losing customers. So if I'm not giving that particular material, or if I don't have the system in place, we can lose the customer. So that is there. No local regulation, so there is no regulatory framework being implemented. So we have these regulations, but no one is monitoring whether that regulation is being implemented properly or not. Again, no business model. There are many like plants, waste management plant or e-waste management plants where they are not profitable, and then they don't get the subsidies or they don't get the incentives, and then the whole business model fails. And also many times these treatment machineries or treatment technologies are not cost effective. So these are few of the challenges what we feel in overall circular economy or waste reduction. Yeah, so that's it from my side. Thank you.
So you spoke about different materials, the recycled materials which would be used in manufacturing and building or construction of the building.
Yes.
Uh, How cost effective is that option? Uh, because there are
Okay.
general idea is that, as you mentioned already, the recycled products don't have the same standards as the new materials. And the other is that is it really worth going for recycled materials? Sometimes they might be higher in price or in the
Okay,
market value.
yeah, so most of these materials are at par with the conventional material in terms of prices. In many times, actually, they are cheaper than if I'll give you the example of cement, we discussed OPC, that is without flash mixing, and then we have this PPC. Government is pushing cement industry to use flash as a substitute to the cement, or some substitute in some percentage. So actually PPC, which is having flash, is cheaper than OPC. So most of these materials with recycled content, which we call it as, they are almost without any additional cost you can get. Just the issue, what I feel is about perception. So in general practice, the perception is if I use a recycle material with recycled content, it is substandard. Or if I'm using a virgin material, then my strength or my quality of material is better. But even we have these IS codes where they actually give the same kind of strength with these recycled materials, or materials with recycled content. So I think the major obstacle is about perception. It is not the cost.
Okay. And what kind of technological advancements or infrastructure we require if we want to support this efficient green buildings project?
So actually, technological advancements are continuously happening. Main hurdle is about incentivizing the green buildings and then making mandatory. Like there are few regulations, like here in Maharashtra now they started with incentivizing green buildings with additional FAR, and it changed the overall scenario drastically. In 2020, they started this initiative where you get additional FSI for green buildings. And then suddenly this demand for green building increased a lot. So this kind of incentivization is required to promote green buildings. But again, it should not be only incentivizing the green buildings, but we need to mandate few basic standards to all. Otherwise, it will be like most of the time what happens is for getting that incentive, developers will implement green building or green building certifications. But then after once they hand it over to the society or residential society or the owners or the occupants, many times it happens that they stop using these facilities provided by developers like sewage treatment plant or organic waste composter, because they feel it is like additional cost for maintenance, right? So then the government should properly monitor and then make it mandatory to use these facilities on site. They need to treat their waste on site, and then some monitoring process should be there.
Okay. But then how do we engage the stakeholders to collaborate for these waste management services? For example, local municipalities and the waste management service providers themselves to collaborate into this particular green buildings initiative. If we want to make it, let's say, pan India, or at least at the policy level, where you would be regulating these conditions in order to build a certain kind of architecture.
Yeah, so there could be two, three ways to do it. First way could be having awareness sessions with the occupants. Because many times what happens is, so typically this we do at handover time, when the developer is handing over all these facilities to residential society or occupants. We generally have a session with them. We explain the benefits in terms of financial benefits. So simply, if I am converting my sewage water, or I'm treating my sewage water and I'm reusing that water for flushing irrigation, I'm reducing my water demand. So in terms of tanker water, if I have to purchase, we just give a comparison: what is the cost for treatment of water on site, and then if you need to purchase the water from tanker. So when they see that this is going to benefit in terms of money, they start maintaining it. So similarly, in other areas also, we can sensitize these occupants. Then having a framework like monitoring these facility management. So government should make some rules or some provide some incentives where if you are treating your e-waste properly, then they should get some kind of incentives, and then actually it will work.
Okay, so primarily awareness and incentivization are two main points that have to be taken into consideration.
Yes, yes, and also monitoring,
Right.
because without monitoring, they should not incentivize it. Otherwise, it
Mhm.
happens at the early stage, but then maintaining the facility will never happen.
Right. And should these regulations be local? For example, should they be different for different regions, or should they be centralized with one single guideline, so that almost
Uh,
every single municipality should give the similar kind of incentive?
Actually, what happens is this one size fits all is not the right way to do it. But then nowadays, most of the green rating systems which are available in India, they have some flexibility which is location specific or regional aspects. So that kind of flexible model or flexible rule should be. So, I was talking about local scenarios, like if we even consider the organic waste generated in urban area and organic waste generated in rural areas. So the volume, the nature of organic waste generated is different. So obviously the strategies to treat those kind of waste should be different. So if we have different set of rules, but then again some standardization should be there, and then these small set of regional kind of rules we implement, that would be helpful.
Okay. So at this point, there is no centralized kind of a guideline for this.
There are very few centralized guidelines available, but not very clear guidelines are there. Like national building codes define some guidelines, then CPWD guidelines are there related to organic waste, or uniform plumbing code is there. But then each local body have their own rules. But now, thanks to the UDCPR in at least Maharashtra, we have centralized kind of rules for all municipalities, but and municipal corporations. But then on national level, definitely there are different set of rules available, and there is no very clear guideline for each and every aspect of waste generated by building.
Okay, I mean, no centralized or like one document that compiles all the issues or all
Yeah,
the
yeah.
practices of sustainability that should be followed
Yes, yes.
during.
Now, actually, Government of India is developing. So, in 2016, they started with this national building codes. They have now one separate chapter related to overall sustainability in buildings, and now they are developing this sustainability code for buildings. So then maybe we will have a very clear picture about all these practices in building.
Okay, interesting. So, according to discussion we have till now, there is a certain gap that exists today, at least in the policy realm, when it comes to something like that. But at least we know that there is something that is going on,
Yes.
at least in that front. Okay. So one last question would be, how do we address the issue of scalability and adaptability of the sustainable practices? Because there are a lot of consumeristic points uh, which are kind of obstacles when it comes to these practices being implemented.
So for scalability, what I feel is if we have these decentralized modules, then they can be replicated at different locations. Then the practices can be scalable. If we have a centralized solution, like say waste management in centralized system is very difficult to manage properly and then maintain properly and then uh, treat the waste properly. But if we have these small, maybe say systems or small location specific systems, and then we can just replicate those kind of systems and the technologies, then they can be easily scalable. But most of the time the focus is to have the centralized system, and then many times the centralized system do fail. So that is what
Mhm.
I feel. If we provide a decentralized system, which can be again one economical aspect we need to check with these decentralized systems.
Mhm.
But according to me, if we have these small decentralized systems and then replicate it, it can be easily managed and scalable.
Okay. But can it be integrated into the urban planning itself? For example, if they are planning a certain sector of the city or the city itself, it should be should those practices be involved into different infrastructures? For example, the market waste, the societal waste, should those have a certain streams through which at least the products of composting or something like that be integrated into other systems of garden department or something like that, which could
Exactly.
utilize those, right? Utilize
Yeah,
those.
that should be there. And again, like in overall planning, like city planning or urban planning, is regional planning, these aspects are not being considered very with some importance. Generally, what happens is they just allocate some space to treat the waste. They don't think about the newer technologies, or in simple terms, say if I have a location where maybe 4 or 5 apartments are ready to treat their waste, but they don't have space with them. So then, if my corporation is providing some space at their near open plot or something like that, they can maintain it. But generally, what happens is you have a centralized location waste management plot allotted in the urban planning or the city planning, and then obviously you have to have then a centralized system. So that kind of awareness is also not there amongst the planners, and then protocols are not there. So while designing, even in designing and education of architects or planners, we need to integrate these issues in their syllabus. Then only we can actually have proper solution.
Okay. I think these are the questions that we had, and the topics we discussed, I think, covered most of the important issues and as well as probable solutions regarding the topic we had at hand. I thank you again for joining us in this
Thank you for
webinar.
inviting me.
Thank you. Thank you again.
Yeah, thanks.